Well,
then.
that was our first issue of DACA. Are we moving on to?
What do you want to do?
Colin Cap. Let's just go on with. Let's get the Trump and the white supremacist thing out of the way.
So we all know what happened in Charlottesville, and we all know how he didn't condemn them the way we. Well, actually, I didn't expect him to condemn them. So, how do you feel about that?
The way. Okay. Well, first of all, I will start off with. I was a Trump voter in 2016, so I really don't feel that Trump is a white supremacist. That's just where I'm coming from here. Now, as to the events of Charlottesville, I think a lot of this stems of Trump is many things, but sometimes his communication via Twitter is not his best side, I don't necessarily think. I think that Trump, when he was saying that both sides are to blame, which is what was upsetting a lot of people, was the point that there were neo-Nazis and all these bad people there on the right wing or whatever you want to say, which I agree. I'm not going to try and say there weren't. But I think there were also, while there were peaceful protesters on the other side, there were also factions of it, be it Antifa or whatever, these radical left-wing organizations that were also violent, and you found out a lot of protests like in Berkeley and other places in the past that have caused violence. They're like burning things and breaking windows and whatnot. So violence on both sides, I think, is bad. I think he could have came out and said what things like neo-Nazis are bad specifically, which he did kind of walk it back eventually. But I think it's just Trump is sometimes a bad communicator on Twitter, and he doesn't say things perfectly because he's not a professional politician, not to sound cliche or anything. But I don't think that means he's a white supremacist by any means. I just think it's like he's a bad communicator sometimes, and that's game over to bad communication.
I think he's a white supremacist, 100%. You can't tell me any different. First of all, his father has ties to the KKK. He has ties to the KKK. He only condemned one side, basically. He didn't even want to acknowledge the fact that they were Nazis, white supremacists. Why are you afraid to use that word? Because you are a white supremacist.
What? I do not believe he's a white supremacist once again. And the ties of his father in this KKK thing and him in the KKK, I've heard this before. I think this is a lot of stretching to make things look like it's stuff that isn't. And I know, I've heard all these attacks and stuff before, but I mean, if you look at Trump, apparently he wasn't seeming like too much of a white supremacist to a lot of the population. He got a larger proportion of the Latino vote than Mitt Romney did in 2012. So he's appealing to some minorities because they don't see him as a white supremacist, because I think that's just a lot of attacks from the left that aren't necessarily fully justified.
Bric's been reading fake news. That's what it is. You've been reading fake news.
Fake news? Nothing I said there was the fake news. That he did get a larger portion of the Latino vote than Mitt Romney did in 2012. That was
okay. Let's take it back for a minute. Okay. So, all right. So Trump was a landlord and he owned property in New York, and he wouldn't house to black people, first of all. And so there was a lawsuit against him from those black people because he wouldn't let them rent out or renovate his property. So you can't tell me that that's not...
The problem with stories like this is, since I have not got these stories in advance. This is kind of off the top.
You don't know?
No,
you don't know the historical context
none of this specific case.
Why didn't you just look it up?
Because I didn't
if
know
you love Trump so much, why didn't you look it up?
Well, because I don't know. I'm not going to look up every case that's been brought up against Trump in the trying to be smear cases brought up against Trump. But if I did look at it, I'm going to see, like most of the situations, it's probably two sides to it, and people are interpreting it differently and to whatever their political agenda is. So I'm not going to I can't go down this road because I have to look into the specific story. I don't want that to sound like a cop-out. Maybe it is, but I have to look at that specific story before I can give any sort of opinion on it. But I feel like there's probably another side to it. So
Trump is a white supremacist to me, and he should have condemned the white supremacists that were in Charlottesville and the Nazis that marched with them.
He did eventually come out, but he did put it in his first tweet.
It shouldn't be a tweet. It should have been a message.
Well, however Trump would have... The problem with this is, whatever Trump would do, in response to the Charlottesville thing would have never been good enough. He could have done a press conference, he could have come out and said Nazis, and the left wing would have still found some way to say that Trump is not coming out strong enough on this. So I think it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you go out and say everything about it, it's like, oh, he's just being fake. He's just saying that because he has to say it. He doesn't really think that. So, I mean, that's what they would have said if Trump would have came out and said that, I think. I'm not saying you specifically, but a lot of people would have. So
Trump is willing to acknowledge someone in the NFL before he'll acknowledge somebody else as a white supremacist.
Trump has came out, he did come out, and whether you agree with how he came out after the initial backlash, he did come out and condemn these people. If it's not good enough for you, it's not good enough for you, but it did happen now, and there's nothing much we can change about that.
It's definitely not good enough for me.
Well, I still don't think he's a white supremacist. Many people don't think he's a white supremacist. I don't think the evidence necessarily points to him being a white
Many
supremacist.
Trump supporters don't believe he's a white supremacist.
I think many people, well, you'll see that we disagree on this issue, but we've talked about it now.